1921, providing clean and healthy drinking and irrigation water to more than 24,000 homes, farms, schools, and businesses in Nevada and Placer counties.
Good evening, and welcome to another edition of Nevada County Interviews. And I'm Paul Minicucci here at the studios of NCTV in Nevada City, California. And tonight, we're going to be talking about Cornish Christmas, which is a great event that happens in Grass Valley, our neighbor city here. And we have with us three guests. Eleanor Knitzer, who's the director of the Grass Valley Cornish Choir. And we have Howard Levine, who's executive director of the Grass Valley Downtown Association, and Joe Day, who's a longtime choir member. Thank you, and welcome to our show.
Thanks for having us.
This is sort of Christmas week around here, so we're taping some shows for Christmas week, and we would be remiss without having Cornish Christmas.
Absolutely.
And we do have our wonderful choir on stage, and they'll be performing in a little bit. But before we do that, Eleanor, I'd like to know a little bit about Cornish Christmas. Tell me how you got started with this choir.
Well, in 1989, I had directed another community choir, and someone in that choir said, next year you need to direct the Cornish Carol Choir. I was new and didn't know what I was saying, so I said, yeah, sure. And then when I got a phone call the next year from the newspaper saying, we want to take pictures of you for the Cornish Carol Choir, I thought, uh-oh. And then in the paper it was that we were going to have a pasty dinner. Before that, I knew I was in trouble because I didn't know any of that history. So I talked to Harold George and found out pretty quickly what the history of the choir was, and for heaven's sakes, what the music was.
Well, I'm going to talk to Joe a little bit about that. Now, Joe, I understand you joined the choir in 1948.
Correct.
And you must have been 5 years old.
No, I was 20 years old.
So, now the choir, I think you had told me off camera that the history of the choir is it started in 1875, is that correct?
Right.
And tell me a little bit about how that choir got started, if you know.
The Cornish miners who were brought over here to mine for gold because they were the only people in the world who knew how to hard rock mine. Mm-hmm. And they brought their carols with them. They brought the Methodist Church with them. They brought the Masonic Lodge with them. And
pasties.
Right.
Pasties.
They might have brought
pasties. Yes, pasties too.
Yeah.
So now, so the Cornish choir at that time was an all-male choir. Is that correct?
Yes, it was an all-male choir until Eleanor took over.
Now, I know that in during the war, there's a famous recording of the choir down 2,000 feet into the mine shaft.
Yeah, right. That was transmitted up from the 2,000-foot level by telephone and then transferred over to the radio. And that program was transmitted to the troops in World War II and to the continent of Europe.
Mm-hmm. Now, I heard somewhere in the grapevine that that recording is going to be replayed.
Yeah.
Do you know about the specifics of that?
Howard does. Oh, you're telling me to hold
hold the mic up.
Yeah, okay, sorry. Yes, KVMR does that on Christmas Eve. David Brenninger our used to be a city manager here, and always does that program for them.
Right. I'm excited to hear that. It's my first year up here. So, Howard, what does Cornish Christmas mean to Grass Valley?
Cornish Christmas is a 43-year-old tradition in downtown Grass Valley. It's one of the original Christmas fairs in the area. It was begun by merchants for purely commercial reasons, to be quite frank about it. And they got together and they started a festival on Mill Street, and that has continued to today. And we've taken the opportunity to go through a number of generations. Some of the years it was great, and then it kind of faded away a little bit and came back. It was expanded to the full T probably around 20 years ago. And so now we have a very successful, strong, family-based, totally fun event with a lot of nonprofits and food, entertainment, and just all the businesses are open so that you can move back and forth, and we just have a community celebration on
So
Friday
what are the
night.
dates this year? Do you know what they are?
Well, one has already passed, the Thanksgiving weekend. It's from Thanksgiving to Christmas, basically on Fridays. So every year you can figure your calendar. The rest of them will be December 3rd, which is coming up, December 10th, and December 17th. And then in years where we don't have Christmas Eve on a Friday night, we would have 5 of them if that's appropriate.
And do some of the so we have street vendors as well as the regular vendors?
Street vendors, well, we have our brick and mortars who are always open. There's permeability back and between the street vendors, which with roasted chestnuts, soap manufacturers, a whole variety
Traditional
of
kinds of
street
crafts.
vendors and crafts, etc., jewelers, and then we also have food vendors. We have pony rides. We have cakewalks with the Grass Valley School Foundation. We actually have modern era. We have a little electric go-kart for young kids who really like it, and it's just a lot of fun. There's a lot of things for young people to do, a lot of things for people of young family age to do together with their children. There's coloring. There are Wheels of Fortune where they can spin and the kids will get a prize from some of our local commercial establishments who want to make available a fun and exciting time for young people.
Right. So, Eleanor, when does the choir perform during this time?
6:30 and 7:30 on the steps of the old Union Building, very traditional.
Yes.
That's where the choir always sang on Christmas Eve.
Is that right? Mm-hmm. So, and do you have lots of old pictures that you share with folks about this, or?
The Union does.
The Union does, yeah, I know that. Right.
We have some.
Right.
And there's been a book written about the Cornish Carol Choir called When Miners Sang. That has lots of pictures, tells the story of Grass Valley through the eyes of the Cornish miners and the singers of the Carol Choir.
And so what kind of songs are these carols, Joe? I mean, are they...
These are traditional Cornish carols, and they don't have the same words or anything that our usual carols have. And they...
And so I know Americans don't really know about the various parts of the British Isles, but Cornwall is really its own separate entity inside of Britain, and they have their own language, it's kind of a Gaelic-based language, and their own traditions.
They used to have their own language. They're trying very hard to get it back again, but yes. And they would like to be on their own, but they are a part of the United Kingdom. And
Right.
but the Cornish are very proud people who want to keep their traditions alive, which is really why the Cornish Carol Choir has meant so much to the community. It helps to keep those traditions of the Cornish alive and well in Grass Valley.
Right. So we're about ready to hear some songs, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna hear a couple of songs, and we'll cut back here and interview a little bit more. Go back, hear a couple of songs, do a little bit more interview, and then we're gonna go out on some music from the choir. So without further ado, here is the Grass Valley Cornish Carol Christmas Choir.
Sound, sound your instruments of joy. Sound, sound your instruments of joy. To triumph shake each string. To triumph shake each string. Let shouts of universal joy. Behold the great I am is given. The King of glory born. Behold the great I am is given. The King of glory born.
You'll notice that I sing a little bit different words to this carol than the regular choir does, because I learned mine, of course, by route from the Cornish miners.
Circling through the boundless skies, circling through the boundless skies. Shepherds filled with consternation, shepherds filled with consternation. Here's the
Great. Thank you very much to the choir and Eleanor. So let me ask a little bit about the music that we just heard. Is this readily available to people, or how do you find the old sheet music for these songs?
When we started out in 1990, there was no sheet music. But since it has been published in Cornwall, it's not published in the United States. And we have some handwritten copies, but mostly they are copied from songs that we've gotten from England itself. Before, they learned everything by rote. So Harold George Sr., who directed for something like 45 years, okay. See, he keeps me honest. They learned everything by rote. The little boys sang alto, then lead were the tenors, and then basses baritones and basses. So 4-part men harmony. And you can hear all the parts moved around. And as Joe said, they didn't sing 4-part harmony. Sometimes it was 8-part. They kind of put in all their own little things.
And so, were you readily accepted when you came into as a woman to change this around?
By some and not by others. We had some men who had been in the choir who wouldn't come and sing. But
you won them over.
Well, I won over the right ones. You know, like Joe came and sang, and I also, because the choir had actually stopped because so many of the men had left, the area changed. And if we couldn't get all the men, then I figured if I was directing, then we could have ladies sing too. Right. So then in 1990, we began to have women sing. Interesting story from one woman was that her father had never allowed her to sing the carols because they were just for the men. So she was thrilled to hear women singing it because she said, I hummed always, but I didn't dare sing them out loud. So
well,
it was...
Eleanor, we're going to ask you to go join the choir again and conduct 2 more songs for us.
All right.
Thank you.
Sure.
So when she's going over, one thing we have to remember is that we have this Cornish heritage here. And there was a time when it was diminishing, and we have to work hard to keep it up so that people understand why we have the white cross with the black field and all the Cornish heritage and traditions that we have. So
it's very, very key to this area.
Yeah.
So I think the choir's about ready for a couple more songs.
The star of Bethlehem.
So thank you. Eleanor's going to come back and join us for about 2 more minutes. Have a regular relay going on here. So now I understand that the choir has made visits to England. Is that correct?
We have. We have. Sorry.
Right? Tell us about that.
This choir, the Cornish Carol Choir, actually went over before the other choirs that have been over, and we did an all-American program, very well accepted. The only thing we did wrong was that we began to sing Cornish carols in August, and they don't start until October. So, it was a faux pas, but it was all right. They liked us, so we were invited back. And out of this grew the Grass Valley Male Voice Choir. The men heard the male voice choirs over in Cornwall, and that's something that is a tradition there, and came back and said, we want to do that too. So we have this Cornish choir, which sings just at Christmas, and then the male voice choir sings the Cornish songs, but we sing all year long. So
And how many male voices are in that choir?
45.
45. That's great. Great. So Howard, you want to just recap for people the dates again for the Cornish Christmas?
The following Fridays are December 3rd, 10th, and 17th. It's from 6 to 9 p.m. It's Mill and Main Streets, downtown Grass Valley. It's family. It's community. It's a place to have a great time. Thankfully, we have this heritage that has been put together by these wonderful people who put up with what we do downtown and our struggles. But Eleanor and Gage and all the people who work on the Cornish traditions in our community, this is why we come downtown.
Right. How many visitors do you think come to the Cornish Christmas a year?
Whoa. I've tried really hard not to make estimates, but I would say that our first one is gigantic, and then after that, it's about 3,000 on a regular night. And so you might say if you looked at 4 nights, it would be about 22 to 25,000 people.
And do we get visitors from Sacramento?
We get visitors from everywhere. On the 10th, we have it's Beale Days. We have the Beale Air Force Base people invited up, which is just down the hill from us. And we also have the League of California Cities who are coming just to see Cornish Christmas, the Cornish Choir, and the traditions that we have in our community.
Well, great. Well, thank you to my guests, Eleanor, Howard, Joe. I'm going to ask Joe to remain seated for the last song.
All right.
Okay.
And then what we're going to do is we're going to go out on a wonderful hymn, and so we'll run the credits. I want to thank the crew and all our guests for having spent this time with us on our Christmas show. And that's all I will say, and I'll see you next time. So I'm going to ask Eleanor to go join the choir again, and we're going to have the choir take us out of the show. So bye-bye until next time. This is Paul Minicucci from Nevada County Interviews.
Thank you.
Another little tidbit I can add to it. When I went to choir practice, my 6-year-old son went with me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he wound up in the tenor section. Harold George put him in between the boys who were learning to sing to keep him from running around the church. And we discovered he was singing the carols right along with the boys. So when we went to the concerts, and this was before Eleanor, he was put in front of the choir because at 6 years of age he was a lot smaller than a 12-year-old.
Well, we're gonna have to take it from there, Joe, because we're running out of time. So here we go, choir. Thank you very much.
While shepherds watched their flocks by night, all seated on the ground, all seated on the ground, the angel of the Lord came down, and glory, 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 and glory shone around.
Come gather round, people, wherever you roam, and admit